Hi, I'll continue with paragraph 27 of the chapter on the brace from Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Wenn bei dem Doppelschlage die zwei ersten Noten durch ein scharfes Schnellen in der größten Geschwindigkeit wiederholt werden, so ist er mit dem Pralltriller verbunden. Man kann sich diese zusammengesetzte Manier am deutlichsten vorstellen, wenn man sich einen Pralltriller mit dem Nachschlage einbildet. Diese Manier gibt dem Klavierspielen zugleich eine besondere Anmut und Glanz. Sie stellt in der Kürze und in einer größeren Lebhaftigkeit einen angeschlossenen Triller mit dem Nachschlage vor. Man muss sie also mit diesem nicht verwechseln, indem sie sich so weit davon unterscheidet, als der Pralltriller und der Doppelschlag von dem ordentlichen Triller. Diese Manier ist sonst noch nicht angemerkt worden. Wegen des langen Bogens über der letzten Figur beziehe ich mich auf das, was bei dem Pralltriller angeführt ist. Ich habe sie so bezeichnet und sie sieht in der Ausführung so aus, wie beides bei Figur 63 abgebildet ist. The notation of the execution part of figure 63, of the brace and pralltrill combined, reflects exactly that what Bach says in the text about repeating the first two notes with the greatest of speed via a sharp or acute hastening. How Bach's statement translates into actual notes and their time values is interesting. Incidentally, when I say the first, second, third note, I'm only referring to the 6 notes of this compound ornament and not the A before it. So, as one can see in the notation, the hastening is realized with the second note of the first 2 notes, the fallende sekunde, or the falling or descending second, the G, being a 128 note, or a semi-hemi-demi-semiquaver, or a quasi-hemi-demi-semiquaver. So I just interrupt that to say, you can see there the difference between that way of, that's done in America, or I don't know what other countries where they call it an 8 note. In Germany it'll be referred to only in German, but as an 8 note or a 16th note or a half note, as opposed to in England and Ireland where they'll say a crotchet or a quaver or a semiquaver. And you can see when it gets to a 128 note that the system, the way of doing it in England and Ireland, then it shows the inefficiency of it. You're pretty much stuck, because I don't think anybody is going to know that a 128 note is called a semi-hemi-demi-semiquaver or a quasi-hemi-demi-semiquaver. So I'd say the Irish and English classification is the more inefficient one. And I think there might be a certain, when Irish and English people prefer calling it a crotchet and stuff, that there's a certain snobbery to that. But I think the other way is the more efficient way and the more practical way and usable way. Yeah, so that was just a by the way. So as one can see in the notation, the hastening is realized with the second note of the first two notes being a 128 note. So the hastening is realized with the second note being a 128 note. If one thinks of the first two notes of this ornament, the first A and G, as Bach tells us, being repeated with the greatest of speed, if one thinks of that sentence, one might imagine that such a repetition of the first two notes would happen with the second two notes, the third and fourth notes, being 128 notes. But that's not the case. It's the second and third notes that Bach made 128 notes, not the third and fourth. The former could have perhaps been the case without the sharp hastening, the scharffes Schnellen Bach mentions. If he'd have said that the second two notes were to be repeated twice as fast, for example, then you might have seen such notation. And besides meaning sharp, scharf can also mean, among other things, precise, exact, clear, acute, and abrupt. And I think Bach will be referring to the sound quality that's created when a trill is sharp, or the sound quality a scharffes Schnellen will produce. With the hastening, it is only the first of the two repeated notes, an A, that is a 128 note, whereas the second of the two repeated notes is a 64th note. However, neither does that second of the two repeated notes, the second G, the 64th note, come in too late, nor does the second note of the first two notes, the first G, come in too early, despite it being a 128 note. The first two notes are still struck only half as fast as the second two notes, despite the tailing, despite it looking, at first glance, like the second and third notes are the ones that are fast. It is the third and fourth that are struck twice as fast, or that come in twice as early. I find that interesting. It's counterintuitive to the information our eyes are getting. You know, you see the two notes that look like they should be the fast ones, and you think they have a different speed to the 64th note before it and the 64th notes after it. But that first 128 note, that comes in on time as if it were another 64th note. And it's the A that comes in early, because the second of the first two notes is shortened. And so the first of the repeated notes is hastened, i.e. it's coming in early. And the one after that is as well, you know, is not coming in late, even though that is back to being a 64th note. So I think that's interesting that the hastening is not there where our eyes would think it is, namely with that first G, 128 note G, but only with the second 128 note, that's the A. So in the written out musical example, one can pinpoint the hastening, the scharffes Schnellen, in terms of its beginning, its end and its duration, and as well, in doing so, realize just how precise and specific Bach's text is. He is dissecting the brace and pral trill combined, despite its brevity, and translating those dissected pieces into words. So some of Bach's words, parts of his sentences, can be referring to the dissected pieces of an example. The evidence of how much thought Bach put into his text is there to be seen, not to mention his notation. That'll be relevant for what's to come. But this is a very good example to locate and to understand, better understand the hastening when Bach talks about a Schnellen, what exactly he means by that and how that might translate into notation. When he says that one can picture it clearest when one imagines a pral trill with a Nachschlag, or afterstroke, as is how I translate the term Nachschlag, which is the turn at the end of the trill, Bach is providing us with an extra, indirect clue on how to perform the pral trill. And one could thus consider the notation of the first 4 notes of the ornament of this figure 63 when trying to master the pral trill, or when reading and trying to understand the last sentence of paragraph 8 from the chapter on trills. And this is it. Der höchste Ton bei den Trillern, wenn zum letzten Mal vorkommt, wird geschnellt. Das ist, dass man nach diesem Anschlage die Spitze des auf das geschwindeste ganz krumm eingebogenen Fingers auf das hurtigste von der Taste zurückzieht und abgleiten lässt. One can see as well just how incorrect Edition Schott's indication of this hastening is in their notation at the back of the first book of the 18 practice pieces at appendix number 5. In their accompanying text, they quote what I just read out from paragraph 8, and they say the third part of their notated example labelled Reichere Ausführung indicates that what Bach is talking about. So they say the third part of their example indicates that what Bach is talking about, but it doesn't. Look at the notation in figure 63 and how Bach himself depicts the hastening. So between the first G and second A, the 2 128 notes. Edition Schott didn't hasten the highest tone the last time it comes forth, the B. They shortened it, thereby hastening the A after it. Their understanding is that naive assumption of the hastening that I mentioned. So I said, when you see how the hastening is notated accurately and precisely by Bach, it's counterintuitive. You think the hastening, the shorter notes begin with the hastening just as Edition Schott did it. But what Edition Schott didn't realize is that B doesn't come in early. It's not hastened. It's coming in as it would have were it a longer note. And that the hastened note is the A. So it's incorrect. By considering that what I pointed out, you have a deeper understanding of what Bach is saying than Edition Schott has. So if you think about what I said pointed out there, and if you understand it, well then your understanding of that is deeper and better than Edition Schott's understanding of it. And that's a fact. That's true. I have notated the hastening for the trill from below that addition shot attempted to notate. Okay, so I'll put up 3 versions, none of which I claim to be 100% correct, so that's why there's 3 versions. Among other things, I'd need a better piano to truly nail it. The tone on the pianos are not clean, and the keys are not equally, they don't have an equal speed. Some are slow, some are okay, some are too slow. So yeah, it's hard. And yeah, I do lean, however, more towards the second and third versions with the triplets and triplet. And then of those 2, more to the third version. The hastening of the last uppermost tone might not be as sharp when it comes to a trill. And if I say addition shots show there that they haven't got a clue, it's not because they got it completely wrong, because they didn't present the correct answer. It's because they claim the incorrect answer to be correct. That's what shows they haven't got a clue. They claim their notation indicates that what Bach is talking about, adding a dot, as if Bach wouldn't mention that if it were true. They claim it to be true, the one true God. Your champions. Lilliput's role of honour, knocking everybody who believes them entirely off course, chasing a red herring, the entire early music movement, thrown off the scent entirely, just like with the dotted rhythm and the double dot, worshipping false gods. It shows they haven't got a clue. It shows the cage. It shows mediocrity eradicating genius. I can unlock secrets in this book. Lilliput's role of honours, incompetence, prevents them from ever unlocking. In the last trill of K332, the second movement, Mozart's sonata, if you look at the bend of the little finger peeking out over the hand and keep an eye on it right to the end of the trill, you can perhaps see the hastening taking place. Bach says this compound ornament gives piano playing all at once a particular grace, gracefulness or charm, that's Anmut, and a lustre, brilliance, sparkle, radiance or glamour, that's glance. Again, knowing the purpose or reason for something, why it's there, why you're doing it, can be useful in figuring out if one is doing it correctly. Does it fulfill its purpose? Am I giving the music its grace or lustre, or am I just playing notes? Those are questions Kissin could be asking himself, for example, if he wants to improve. Or Sokolov. When they play the pieces like an ungeübter, as Bach calls it, or a novice, an amateur, the way a beginner would play them, like how Sokolov plays the second movement of K332. They might play it better than any beginner has ever played it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, they do play it better than any beginner will have ever played it. But they are still playing it the way a beginner plays it. That is the category in which they've put themselves, their division. So regardless of how good they execute the practices and habits of an ungeübter, and no matter how great the piano is they're playing on, it's not going to catapult them into any other category than that of the novice or the amateur, or as Bach calls it, the ungeübter. They are champions of the beginner section. In the beginner, in the novice, in the amateur division, they'll take home first prize. But Bach, Mozart and Beethoven, they're in a different division. They're in the premier division. You won't find Bach, Mozart and Beethoven in the beginner, in the amateur division, of which Kissen and Sokolov are the champions, and which is filled with the roll of honour. But that division in which Bach, Mozart or Beethoven are in, that one doesn't exist anymore. That has been eradicated. Bach says this compound ornament represents or presents in brief, in der Kürze, so in abbreviated form, and in greater liveliness or vivacity, a connected trill with an afterstroke, with the afterstroke. An angeschlossenen Triller is one that comes after an appoggiatura, as Bach has said in paragraph 1 from the chapter on trills. He says, however, that one mustn't confuse them, in that this compound ornament, which in the next paragraph he refers to as the Prall and the Doppelschlag, or at least he refers to the Doppelschlag part of this compound ornament as the Prall and the Doppelschlag, which I might translate as the glancing brace. So he says this compound ornament is as much distinguished from the connected trill as the Prall trill and the brace are from the ordinary trill. He talks about the Prall trill in paragraph 32 from the chapter on trills. Muss recht prallen. Der zuletzt angeschlagene oberste Ton von diesem Triller wird geschnellt. Dieses Schnellen allein macht ihn wirklich und geschieht mit der im 7., so 8. Paragraph, angeführten Art und mit einer außerordentlichen Geschwindigkeit, so dass man Mühe hat, alle Noten in diesem Triller zu hören. In paragraph 10 from the chapter on the brace, Bach says, da dieser Doppelschlag die allermeiste Zeit geschwinde gemacht und die oberste Note nach der schon angeführten Art geschnellt wird, and that hastening can be seen in any of Bach's figures depicting the brace. With the ordentlichen Triller, or the regular trill, on the other hand, Bach says in paragraph 7, Ihr Schlag muss vor allen Dingen gleich und geschwinde sein. One can see how he notates its execution in figure 23c. This is the difference to which Bach is referring. The regular trill, as well as the connected trill, will need a certain amount of time to properly speak or say its piece, if you will. In the case of the Prall trill, or the brace, or this compound ornament comprised of the two, as opposed to an even attack, one is instead dealing with this hastening. So that's the difference. One is even, fast and even, and the other, there's this hastening involved. These ornaments exist as musical entities, happenings, each with its own character, and like Bach says, distinct from each other. They are not mere collection of notes that are indistinguishable from each other, as Lilliput's roll of honour will present them, in that all they know what to do with them is to play them in their cage where nothing exists as fast as humanly possible, with each roll of honour midget trying to outdo the speed of the other roll of honour midgets, while still, without even noticing the absurdity of it, playing others as slow as an ungeübter will play them. There's in Lilliput are always these contradictions, these egregious sort of this double standard where they'll commit atrocities, let's say figuratively speaking or literally speaking, whatever, in whatever field it is, they'll commit atrocities and they'll take the greatest offense to the truth if it in any way attacks them. But they'll condone or they'll applaud horrible, like character assassinations or smearing of people, of giants. They'll take, like the way Glenn Gould makes fun of Mozart, and that's not going to get a lot of shock or, negative response. But dare I say anything bad about Glenn Gould, that'll be received with horror. And it's, the roll of honour, all their recordings, they're full of massive mistakes, and Lilliput will think they're listening to perfection, and I include myself. I went through college, and when I was younger, listening to Kissin, thinking I was listening to perfection because I was completely ignorant of the massive mistakes he's making. And so somebody, like in my playing, there'll be people who scream, oh, that's wrong, because it doesn't sound like what they're used to. And yet they're totally oblivious to the massive mistakes they're making. In that mistakes that some of them that could be noticed by counting. But that goes, it's a big double standard, a big hypocrisy. And what I am doing here is showing what you're going to see after this next batch of videos is further evidence of how you're being lied to and how the roll of honour fail, how they get it wrong, and how they undermine and sabotage or damage everybody's endeavours in music because of the position they are given in society. Bach says this ornament hasn't otherwise yet been noted, meaning he's the first to do it. Meaning everything he says here in this paragraph and everything he mentioned elsewhere, which he connects to this, has or could have had on a certain level an extra importance for him. And this is, again, will be relevant to what's to come. I can relate to this with regard to AC fingering, the only complete fingering system, the solution to fingering, the correct answer, the truth, the one true God in the world of fingering. Because that has never been otherwise noted, because I'm the one who discovered it, and I'm the one who broke it to the world. Nobody will be able to solve fingering without coming up with the AC fingering. And the fact that it doesn't get noticed or recognized is not a reflection on me, but a reflection on them. They are not clever enough, evolved enough to recognize it when it's presented. The solution to fingering when it's presented on a silver platter. It's no better than, you know, in the days of Copernicus when he said that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. The reaction to the solution to fingering meets as many blank faces as those discoveries would have then. And if you have realized what AC fingering is, recognized its significance, well, you can see that as a sort of a sign of your quality, and that you set, you know, just think of that. It's a sign of your quality. Because it is a quality. If the correct answer is presented to you and you recognize it without the need of it being, you know, a big parade behind it, or it dressed up or packaged like that or advertised, if you can see it simply and recognize it, that speaks volumes for the type of person you are and your quality. And you hear in religion, you know, stories in religion class I have when I was in school, you know, about God or Jesus or whatever God, let's say, appearing. He doesn't appear as the king with the riches. He appears as a beggar. You know, and it's the, you know, that's the test of the people. And so when AC fingering, when the solution of fingering comes, and I'm the, you know, I'm the whatever you call it, I'm the one delivering it. It's the same thing. And I say I don't want to be believed, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be taken seriously. Those are two different things. Take me seriously. Examine what I say. See, is it true? Test it. And then agree with me. That's what not believing me means. Okay, I'll leave it at that for today, and I'll pick up where I left off in the next video. Thanks. Bye.